Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of GeoPod. I'm your host, Dylan Woods, and today I'm gonna give you a little Iran update, if you will, and share with you my insights pertaining to some of the developments that have occurred within the US-Israeli-Iran conflict. Now, obviously, a lot has occurred this past week. The war is now almost concluding its second week. A lot of developments occur daily, and I just want to give you my insights into the most important developments, whilst debunking some of the rhetoric that's being callously spouted online. Now, by any measure, the war more or less is going the way I predicted previously on this channel. The combined force continues to successfully degrade Iranian air defenses, Iranian aerial capabilities, as well as both offensive and defensive capabilities across the entire military spectrum. As of right now, more than half of Iran's missile launch sites have been obliterated. More than half of its missile stockpiles has either been used or has been destroyed. And most of their missile launch capabilities, especially pertaining to the western, southwestern and central provinces, has been degraded by approximately 80 to 90%, right? And this is something that we can measure in the kind of volleys and the barrages Iran has used within its retaliatory efforts. If we take a look at the waves of missiles and drones they were able to fire at the first days of the war, and the waves and missiles they are able to, and the amount of missiles and drones they're able to fire now, the difference is astronomical, right? At the beginning of the war, Iran could easily utilize 100, 150 missiles within a wave. As of right now, that number is close to 5, 6, 10 at the height of that spectrum. So we're seeing a huge decrease within Iran's capabilities, within Iran's long-range drone missile capabilities. Not just those targeting Israel, but also those targeting the Gulf states within the region. The last missile impact, for example, occurred on the 5th of March in Bahrain. So that's approximately almost a week ago at the time of this recording. So we're seeing a huge effect of the aerial efforts of both the United States and Israel. And that's a good thing, right? And it's exactly as I predicted. Missiles and drones are Iran's weapons of choice, right? And it's your job strategically to take their tooth away. And first of all, you go after the missile launchers. Second, you go after the drones. You nullify their aerial defensive capabilities. You nullify their naval capabilities, which the United States has done and is doing as of this particular moment in time. More than 30 warships are laying on the floor of the Persian Gulf or within the Indian Ocean. Mine-laying vessels are being taken apart as we speak. So Iran's defensive and offensive capabilities are being degraded and nullified to the fullest extent possible, and will continue to be degraded and nullified over the course of the coming week or weeks. So what we have seen in terms of Iranian retaliation is efforts particularly designed to weaken resolve and to put as high an economic cost on the aggressors as possible. And this is nothing surprising, and it baffles me, honestly, to look on social media and see all these analysts and experts being completely caught off guard by this development. I'm like, Iran's entire deterrent, entire strategy militarily was always built upon around these two strategic objectives. Close the Strait of Hormuz, mount economic costs for whoever party is attacking them, and try to turn it into a regional war, hopefully resulting into a mounting international pressure that will halt Israeli and United States campaigns. This has always been their deterrent. This is nothing new. This shouldn't be surprising to any analyst, to any expert, or to anyone even remotely interested or affiliated with geopolitics in general. And the fact that it is shows you the level of expertise and excellence that the current class of analysts and experts possesses, which is, well, very underwhelming to say the least. So is there any points of critiques pertaining to the United States Israeli aerial campaign, military campaign in general? Oh yeah, absolutely there is. For one might say the security of the commercial shipping lanes could be optimized, could be bolstered further than it is currently being done. And I kind of agree with that. I feel that perhaps not necessarily just the United States and Israel, but allies such as the United Kingdom and France can play a bigger role in this regard, as they have done when the Houthis were targeting commercial shipping lanes within the Strait of Hormuz and Persian Gulf over the past couple of years. So yes, obviously there are some adaptations to be made, and there are some elements to improve, absolutely. However, it must be noted that, because what I've been seeing online is mostly panic regarding the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the mining of the Strait of Hormuz, and the compromising of commercial shipping lanes. And although that's very credible, right, those are very credible concerns, here's what we must understand, right? Because I've been hearing and listening to analysts and experts call, the United States must focus more of its military efforts to counter unmanned surface vehicle attacks from Iran to commercial shipping vessels. No, the United States should do exactly what they're currently doing. You want the Iranian Navy to be less effective in targeting commercial shipping lanes? You do exactly what you're doing now. You further degrade their chain of command. You further deplete their missile and drone stockpiles. You take away their fangs. The moment they no longer have fangs, or they no longer have platforms to utilize these fangs, all of their offensive and defensive capabilities, whether it's on the Iranian shores or within the Persian Gulf or Strait of Hormuz, become less efficient. Eventually implausible altogether. So that's exactly what you want to be doing. However, those endeavors take time, those ventures take time. What did we expect? That the Ayatollah regime and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard would just roll over at the impact of the first airstrike? No. They've been preparing for war for a very long time. They've bolstered their asymmetrical capabilities to such an extent that it can keep them in the fight for at least a considerable amount of time. The US and Israeli command centers should have expected this and have expected this. It's what they've said straight from the get-go. This entire campaign is designed to nullify, to degrade, neutralize Iranian defensive and offensive capabilities before ammunition shortages become a real issue. And so far, they are making progress in that regard. But Iran is a big country, and Iran is very well armed, has a lot of missiles, has a lot of launch sites, has a lot of platforms which it can strike. So yes, obviously, these endeavors take a bit of time. But here's what we must remember. We're barely at the end of week 2 here. It's only been around 2 weeks. That's nothing on the grand scheme of things. Russia, as of right now, has been waging a war in Ukraine for the past 4 years. Just to take it into perspective, right? This war will not be won by the party who runs out of missiles or ammunition first. This war will be won by the party that successfully nullifies and degrades both the offensive and defensive capabilities of the other. That's how wars are won. Because wars are not waged by blindly firing ammunition at each other, waiting for one party to run out of ammo, then shake hands and come to the negotiating table. That's not how it works. You outmaneuver, you outclass. And that's what the combined strike force is exactly doing as of this particular moment in time. But yes, as I've previously predicted on this channel, there will be retaliatory efforts. Iran will counterattack. Iran isn't just going to roll over. But the best strategy in containing, degrading, and eventually neutralizing them is exactly what you're doing now. You keep taking away their fangs. What we've seen is air defenses around the region holding up. We haven't seen any degradation in the interception rate, both in Israel as well as in the Gulf states, pertaining to Iranian missiles and drones, which means that Iran has failed to degrade both the offensive and defensive capabilities of its opponents. Very simple statistic, very simple data. Now, my biggest point of critique pertaining to the US-Israeli campaign is this. I feel that there's too much emphasis being placed right now on the targeting of internal security apparatus, targeting the law enforcement command, targeting the Bashish military headquarters, targeting Iranian Revolutionary Ground Force headquarters. Too much emphasis is being placed on destabilizing the regime as of this particular moment in time. Why is that a point of critique? Well, it's as I've said before. My main point of critique in Israel's 12-day war against Iran last year was that they targeted regime infrastructure, regime headquarters, and regime stability when there was no force present, no party present on the ground who could fill in that vacuum once the regime would destabilize. And it seems to be exactly the case right now. yes, we can target Iran's internal security apparatus. We can target the headquarters of police, of the law enforcement command of the Bashish, of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, of police stations, of clerical and regime institutions. But if we don't have a unified opposition front that can fill in that vacuum, that can take the fight to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard on the ground, all those efforts are futile. You're not going to overthrow or topple the regime with a couple of weeks of airstrikes. If that is your wish, to keep destabilizing, targeting the regime from the air, then you need to have a very long breath. And it's something that you might have to sustain in the rate that you're doing right now for months and months and months on end. And that's obviously very costly, and it might not yield any results altogether. So what I would rather see is that the Israelis and the United States focus primarily on the degradation of Iran's offensive and defensive capabilities. Go after, do what you've already been doing, but more of it. Go after their navy in particular, because though that navy poses the greatest threat against the Strait of, pertaining to the Strait of Hormuz and all the commercial and merchant vessels that are passing through there. That should be your priority. Degrade Iran's missile and drone capabilities to the furthest extent, degrade their offensive capabilities, degrade their defensive capabilities across every spectrum. And once that is done, once you have taken and pulled out every tooth, once you've nullified every limb, every finger, every toe, then you go after this. Then you go after the main frameworks. But once again, that can only yield results if you have a force, a party on the ground that can fill in that vacuum. The only way this regime gets toppled if there's a unified opposition front. And as of right now, I have seen no signs whatsoever that there's a unified opposition front in place. And creating one now, when there's chaos and anarchy in the country, will prove to be significantly more difficult compared to whether you had done it beforehand. And this has been my main point of critique on Israel's campaign last year. It's my main point of critique now. And if regime change is still a strategic objective, then we are in need of some serious tactical and strategic adaptations right now. Furthermore, what we have seen is we've seen an increase in axis of resistance activity, Iranian proxies that are trying to take the fight to the United States and Israel. Particularly Hezbollah. The IDF is preparing for an expansive ground operation within southern Lebanon. It's currently waging aerial campaigns over Lebanese skies, and Hezbollah has been firing daily barrages of rocket drones and missiles, specifically targeting northern Israel and Israeli military outposts in southern Lebanon. This comes as nothing new, although I wouldn't say surprised, but it is interesting to see that Hezbollah is eager to partake in the fight with such vigor, especially given the significant blows they've suffered in the fall of 2024 by the hands of the Israel Defense Forces. However, what it also shows us is that Israel is in no way strained regarding its military capabilities. If they can wage simultaneous operations, both targeting Iran and Hezbollah, it means that they are pretty comfortable as of this particular moment in time, and in no way, shape or form strained either offensively or defensively, which means that the campaign targeting Iran and Iran's military capabilities, or rather the degradation thereof, is proving to be successful. Now, the United States CENTCOM currently recently said that it plans to continue with the attacks for at least another 2 weeks and then go from there. And that's more or less in compliance with the analysis and the assessments that they've given us before the start of the war, or at the onset of the war, if you will. Previously, I've said that the degradation of Iran's military capabilities could be completed within approximately 2 weeks, and I still believe that to be the case. However, like I said before, what we have seen is more emphasis being placed on striking and targeting the internal security apparatus of Iran, government institutions, regime institutions, etc., etc., which in my opinion, as I've said before, at this particular moment in time, is a bit of a waste of time, really. Like what the United States and Israel are hoping for is that by degrading regime efficiency, more protests and riots will erupt, which eventually will take the form of an organized movement that will challenge the regime. But without vocal and open support, both logistical, political, rhetorical, militarily, that has a very little chance of happening in the short term, right? And it could have been done significantly easier if the United States and Israel had invested in the creation of a unified opposition front beforehand. Previously on my channel, I did a whole strategy breakdown on how to topple the Iranian regime. So if you want to watch that, and if you want to gather some knowledge in that regard, you can visit that clip on my channel. It's a good piece of material. What do I expect to happen over the course of the next week, let's say? I expect the United States and Israel to keep doing what they're doing. Further degrade Iran's offensive and defensive capabilities, defend the snake, nullify them to the fullest extent possible. I believe Iran will utilize its asymmetrical capabilities pertaining to the Strait of Hormuz. Many people are afraid that they will continue to mine the Strait of Hormuz. They may. The problem with that is this, that it will prove to be very costly for Iran itself. Iran needs to utilize at least the majority of the shipping lanes pertaining to the Strait of Hormuz to ship crude oil to China and to utilize the Iraqi economy for sanction evasion. So the moment they start fully mining those waters, they do have the capability, by the way, of doing that. They have over 5,000 naval mines in their inventory. So they do have the capacity of doing that. It will severely degrade and severely halt their own economic operations. Now, there's one pipeline, the Goreyazk pipeline, that Iran can utilize to bypass these negative effects. It would mean that the crude oil exports will be halved in that regard. So if you are the United States of America, and if you're Israel, you're going after that pipeline. You, once again, you fang the snake in any spectrum, militarily, politically, and economically. And that's what the United States and Israel should be focused on right here, right now, rather than going after the regime directly. Yes, take away their chain of command, keep targeting commanders, because those yield immediate military effects. But going after law enforcement institutions as of this particular moment in time, when there's no force or no party to fill in that vacuum, is kind of a waste of time. At last, I want to conclude this clip with the following message. There's a lot of, like I said before at the beginning of this clip, there's a lot of rhetoric being spouted, narratives being disseminated, being accepted by the general populace, that are in no way, shape or form rooted in reality. I've already debunked some of the most nonsensical and ideological of these and idiotic of these narratives pertaining to Iranian missile stockpiles and the retaliatory capabilities of Iran as of this particular moment in time. Furthermore, there seems to be a narrative that Israel dragged the United States into this war. No, that's not the case at all. This operation, this campaign has been planned and been prepared for months on end, both by the United States and Israel. This is a joint campaign that is waged in collaboration between them and other allies within the region. So no one got dragged into this war. What the biggest problem, the biggest weakness, the biggest vulnerability I see, especially in Western thinking or in Western perception pertaining to this ongoing conflict, is a huge lack of resolve. As I've said before, war is costly. No matter who wages it or who you wage it against, war is costly. Yes, diplomacy must be pursued to the fullest extent possible. And it has in regards to the Ayatollah regime. For 4 decades we've tried to barter with them, to bargain with them, to pursue diplomatic ventures. All of them failed. So now that diplomacy has failed, there's only one option left on the table. And that is make sure that the Iranian Ayatollah regime can no longer pose a threat to its own populace, the region, and the global sphere in general. So to speak of an endless war, right? The German Chancellor Merz spoke of that he's afraid that the United States is going to embark on an endless war. And my first reaction to that was, what do you mean endless war? We've barely been doing this for 2 weeks. What do you mean endless war? What it shows you is a lack of resolve. We in the West forgot what it takes to win wars. Yes, wars come at a cost. Wars come at the cost of ammunition. It comes at the cost of resources. It comes at the cost of certain economic prosperity. Those are the costs of war, no matter who you wage it against, for how short, for how long. And that's where resolve comes into play. If we wish to efficiently deter the adversaries of today and tomorrow, we must booster our resolve. And we must be confident in our projection of power, of military capability, and mindset. Strategically and operationally, the war is going more or less as planned. The objectives of the combined strike campaign are being met. Degradation of Iran's air defenses, ever-expanding air superiority over Iranian skies, the degradation of its missile and ballistic missile and drone program, the degradation of its navy, all of which are going exactly to plan. And the ever-weakening Iranian retaliatory efforts stands as a testament to that. The key word here is resolve. This is all I want to share with you today. If you have any questions or comments for me, please feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. You can also reach out to me on one of my socials, and I aim to get back at you as swiftly as possible. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this clip, and I wish you all a blessed day. Thank you.